Spiritual Bullshit with Tigmonk and Maya Lila. Enjoy!
Aloha. Welcome. Another episode of Spiritual Bullshit, number 6. Maya Lila, how are you?
I'm doing very well. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I think we just need to be honest and tell them that we're doing back-to-back episodes now.
Yes.
We just recorded number 5.
Yeah.
But we got into a really juicy topic at the end. We're like, oh shit.
Well, yeah, if you're listening to number 5 at the end, like, we could just cut, we could continue talking forever. We probably had talked for at least, 4 or 5 hours. But we're like, okay, we'll stop this one, and then we'll start a new one on this juicy topic.
Yeah.
Which is body image.
Correct.
Yeah.
And I'm stoked and a little scared. I'm stoked because there's going to be so much resonance with people about this. Because I think, if anything, it's like a worldwide epidemic.
Yeah. I don't know of anybody who doesn't have body image.
Yeah, to some extent.
Yeah.
You know, even somebody that's rocking sexy big time. It's like there's still
something.
Yeah, the perceived deficiency somewhere on the body.
Yeah.
But
that reminds me of this woman that I knew. This is a long time ago. And she's beautiful. Like, really one of the most physically beautiful people I've met. And one day we were working together, and one day she came into work, and she got a boob job.
Uh-huh.
And for me, it just ruined it. Like, it kind of grosses me out. But beyond that, it made her look matronly. Like, in a way, not that that's bad, but like
matronly,
like motherly. Like, her boobs are so big, like she looked kind of like fat or something at that point. Right. And so, like, for me, like, she changed. Like, instead of having this like beautiful, perfect, standard body, all of a sudden, like, she looked almost more overweight with the boob job. Yeah. And I was like, why did you do that? But obviously it was important for her to have larger breasts, even though, like, she had great breasts before. Yeah. And I just remember being blown away for, like, that experience for me was that I was looking on the outside at someone who I thought had a perfect body. Right. But even for her, it wasn't perfect.
Yeah, and I love that play, too. And I've had the experience with somebody that I've been super, super close to, that went through the experience, of having a bunch of kids and still a beautiful person, but yet it kind of destroyed, in their mind, the chest area. Where it's like, oh my God, there's nothing there now. And it was a huge point of hurt. But again, from my experience with that, there was still this love and appreciation that really enjoyed just the authenticity of that, and I didn't see it as deficient in any way, but I could understand her perspective. And so then she had the experience of getting augmentation done, which I could totally see how that added value, to her experience. But I also saw judgment from other people who thought whatever. But it's like they didn't know the circumstance in a way that I kind of knew it, the intimacy of it for that person. And so it was fun to kind of watch that unfold and see all the judgment that might be taking place.
Which judgment, like that's really what it comes down to.
Big thing,
It's like judgment of our own bodies, judgment of other people's bodies.
Even our judgment of what we would like to experience for our body. Yeah. Like a boob job, if somebody wanted to do that. It's like, because I could see from one perspective that says, oh, well, without judgment, then you wouldn't want to change that. But I don't really see that as true, because it's like without judgment, then you wouldn't have judgment towards an authentic expression that wants to experience something like a desire.
That's also true.
Yeah, and so you can only just look again to your own experience for what feels right and true, and give other people the freedom to express and explore however they want to do that.
Well, there's that coming from a place of, like, joyfully wanting to experience something versus, like, the place of feeling that deficiency and trying to get the external to, like, increase your sense of self, or to make you feel better. Totally. Which I think, like, that's the part where we look at, like, oh, well, that's not the ideal, because you're not actually getting healing necessarily, even though it might turn into healing later. Like, we don't know what's
and that's the thing, we don't fucking know. Which is the beautiful thing about the spiritual bullshit, is because we can acknowledge that the concepts that we might or might not be pointing to could be void and null, or null and void for some and relevant for others.
Well, let's get personal. Yeah. Okay. So I've always fluctuated. I've always been on, I guess, like, the heavier end when I was growing up. And so I never felt thin enough. And it was always, like, thin enough. Like, you have to be thinner. You have to lose weight. You have to work out more. And I remember it was kind of like a family thing. Like, my parents would say things to me about it. And I'm very athletic. And so as I got older and I started doing things that I enjoyed, like, I did lose some weight. But I remember this one month, and I was going through heartbreak and like just depression, and so I lost 20 pounds in 1 month, and I finally got down to my ideal weight, which I think was like 129 pounds. And I remember being skinny and being disappointed because I had no more ass, my boobs were gone, and like my face looked older because when you lose fat, your wrinkles show up more, you know. And so it was just this. It was this amazing experience of realizing that like I got what I thought I always wanted, which was being 129 pounds, and it still didn't make me happy. And it had like a flip side that was just as bad as being 20 pounds heavy.
Yeah, it didn't matter. Yeah, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
No, I love that too, because that's kind of reflective of my experience too. I grew up as the fat kid. I think once I hit like age 9 and went through some experiences, then it's like all of a sudden, pow, I just put on a bunch of weight.
Yeah.
And
mine was 7 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny how it just happened, and it became my story all the way up until my summer going into my senior year.
High school?
Yeah, of high school. The year that I dropped out. But that summer, I had lost a bunch of weight, or like 40 pounds, and then put on a bunch of muscle. I had done like some sort of like 3-month body challenge thing. And I had a friend that was helping me train, and, you know, just eating, you know, classic chicken and tuna and salads. And it was a fun experience, and it gave rise to a whole new like sexual experience in my life, you know, because before that there wasn't really confidence or anything. And I didn't even lose my virginity until after that experience of losing all that weight at 18. And so it kind of gave rise to this whole new experience. But then at the same time, shortly after that, I kind of just went back to putting on weight. Of course, that was kind of a crazy time in my life too. That's when I was like doing meth and just being out on my own and being crazy. But it had like slowly creeped back up. And then after I got married and then had Adela, when she was born 9 years ago, I was 280 pounds. And so that was a real interesting time for me, because not only was I going through these transformative experiences on the inside, just with like heart stuff and this wisdom and insight, there was this external experience that I was terribly uncomfortable with and just really hated. But again, I find that my experience of embodying the insight and the wisdom of love or whatever, then naturally there was this progression of where the weight just started to fall off.
Yeah.
And I had, of course, the whole dance of, you know, trying to diet and all of this, and none of that really ever worked for me.
Yeah.
What really seemed to work for that experience was just surrendering and realizing that it's not who I was.
Yeah.
Of course, that was also going through the whole release of the false identity, which is my worth and who I am is defined, of course, by thought, label, and opinions and judgments. And so in the release of that, in seeing through the facade of that, there was less resistance and less tension within my being, and a greater sense of joy just for being alive. And I think that contributed to the falling away of that weight. But still, even now, I'm like at 182, 183 pounds. And there's still this movement of, wow, I really could lose 15, 20 pounds easily and whatever. And essentially feel better about myself. But I don't know if I want to believe that.
Yeah. Well, and again, that was kind of my experience of that. Like, getting to that ideal place and realizing that it did make me happy. Whereas, like, and again, I think it goes back to that, like, inside-outside thing where, like, if you're coming at it from the inside out joyfully, then, you know, then it's great. Like, you want to lose 50 pounds because you're excited about it, and, like, you know, then it's a fun game. But that's not how we usually do it. We usually say, like, oh, well, I would be sexier, you know, if I was 15 pounds lighter, or, you know, like, all of these things that are essentially, I would be more lovable.
Exactly. Yeah. I would be able to compensate for a deficiency. And that's kind of like where I'm at right now is finding a playful space to engage that rather than a deficient space. Because again, the whole movement of sexiness, and this is something that I'm playing with too, especially after my experience of coming out of a marriage and then after losing all that weight, and then in the eyes of, you know, people, oh, you know, he's really attractive and sexy, may not be something that I'm so accustomed to. And so it's kind of fun to play with that energy a little bit. But at the same time, I could see, oh, wow, I could really get lost in that.
Yeah.
Or be really concerned about that, and try and hold up a certain image rather than it just be play.
Yeah.
But, but even in that, the idea of wanting to be sexy so that somebody else thinks you're sexy is a pretty dangerous game to play.
Yeah, because then you end up chained in that kind of like the duality thing of that need for somebody else giving you that mirror back. That judgment of like, you're sexy, so you're valuable. Yeah. And then if that goes away, then what are you?
Yeah, and then that also goes into the whole play of wanting to be desired. Yeah. Which I think is really, really common.
Yeah, no, definitely. That's a huge thing, and especially as a woman. Yeah. Like, we're taught that you have to be beautiful to be desired, and that you have to be skinny to be desired, which isn't necessarily true. Yeah. And, and again, like, going through life, it's so fascinating how, what's real and true is so not in alignment with what the illusion is or what we're presented with. Because when it comes down to it, like, people, like, when you're in love, like, people, like, if you have a big ass, people love that, or, like, it's so specific to your connection with the other person. Yeah. And essentially, like, it oftentimes doesn't even matter.
Yes, so
in the ways that we make it, like, we make it feel like it does matter. It's so important that we're thinner or that we look a certain way to be worthy of love.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like the example we talked about in the last episode of, like, stretch marks. Yeah. And from my experience, being with the mother of my child, for me, it's a beautiful experience, to be honored, and it is sexy in a certain way. But from the perspective of the one with stretch marks, they can perceive it as a disaster. Yeah. But again, when two people come together in that loving space, none of that stuff matters anymore. Yeah. It's like, because that's what love does, is it embraces the totality. Yeah. And doesn't try and, like, dissect it into pieces of, oh, this is enough, but this isn't, and this needs to change, or this shouldn't.
Yeah. And then, like, of course, like, I look at my experience, like, being with different guys, and I've been with guys that have six packs, and I've been with guys that are, like, 40, 50 pounds overweight. Yeah. And it really doesn't matter to me. Yeah. Like, it's weird, because you think it would. Yeah. But it doesn't.
And men really think it would.
And women do too. Yeah.
And that's so funny. Yeah. Because that was my experience too. Because especially after, losing 100 pounds, 6-pack abs, I don't even know if that's a possibility, after that kind of body stretching and all of that. But I know that was kind of a concern for me, or if anything, a curiosity. But what I found out is it doesn't matter. Yeah. Because what the woman really wants is the connection, the present moment experience of connecting with another human being that's totally there into her, and worshiping that space. And that's what's important, is the emotional connection and all of that. And so I appreciate the freedom in that, to know that another woman isn't so interested in what I think they are, from a like a societal projection. Yeah. But then I see another part of me that's kind of pissed off because it wants to use that as a motivation. Yeah. To stay in shape. Yeah, yeah. Which it can, because I can understand at some point, a woman might, for her own preferences, might want it this way or that way. But again, the core of it being that it doesn't matter as much as we think it does.
And that it's really about what you want. Like, do you want, like, do I want to be, is this a certain body image that I would like to go for as far as creating my body into that, more than like, oh, I'm going to do this so I can have greater chances of success at getting a date, or something like that. Or like, again, like more opportunities for love. Because that's kind of what I think I figured out, is I thought that if I was in better shape, then my chances of being loved were higher.
Right,
basically.
Right. That's so common.
Yeah. And also, too, like, I've struggled most of my life with this, like, a beauty thing. Because, like, I have, like, a larger nose. And so I always interpret it as, like, oh, well, my nose is too large to be considered, like, classically beautiful. Uh-huh. So then I don't fit into, like, the Barbie, mold. So I'm not beautiful enough. Yeah. And so that, again, it was just something that I carried with me of, like, when I'd meet somebody, I'd be like, oh, well, he's really hot and I'm not beautiful enough. So I would immediately, like, cut off any possibility for,
Even energetically.
Yeah, totally energetically.
It cuts it off.
Yeah, and it was definitely me cutting it off energetically, where it wasn't the actual truth, but it was just me, again, like, projecting that out. And so the last few years I've really focused on, like, like living that truth of like, no, I'm beautiful, I'm beautiful, I'm beautiful, you know, and really trying to get to the feeling place of that, you know, because again, there's like, what do we believe? And then, you know, it's like, okay, well, I know I'm beautiful, whatever. But it's like, do I really feel that? Yeah. And that's definitely a journey that I've been on for a few years.
You know, and I can, as you speak to that, I can sense that within my own experience too. It's just this ever-expanding embrace and acceptance for where I'm at too. Because even, it's like when I got back from Hawaii last year, I was 172 pounds. And it was like the most, I don't know if I say in alignment with the mental projection that I've ever had. Plus, I was in Hawaii for 6 months, eating awesome food, and running around and not giving a shit, and you know, walking all over the place, and just really being in a space of joy, which I think contributed to that. And then coming back, I kind of stepped into a little bit of resistance with trying to figure out a certain flow to my life, and was, you know, going through the separation and all of that. And so since then, you know, put on, I don't know, 15 pounds over the past year. And I see this little difficulty with being okay with that. And not seeing it as a major fuck up. Yeah. It's like, oh shit, why couldn't I just maintain that? Yeah. You know, because I saw how active I was, you know, even like with doing push-ups and stuff, just out of joy, not out of trying to find a result, but just this feels good. And then coming back here and slipping back into a certain pattern of, holy shit, I'm drinking so much beer. Yeah. You know,
which again, is it really slipping back into a pattern, or is it just that life changes?
The natural flow.
The natural flow, and it's always changing. Yeah. And so, again, we are like, okay, well, I'm supposed to be a size whatever, so I have to stay a size whatever for the rest of my life. Yeah. Otherwise, I'm failing or I'm doing something wrong. Yeah.
God, that's so awesome, too.
Yeah. Which, in a way, we kind of do that to ourselves, like, by wearing clothing. If we didn't have to wear clothing, like, I don't think people, like, number one, it would just, like, all of the different body shapes, we just see them all, and so they'd all be beautiful, because they are. Like, that's one thing I had an experience of going to one of those naked Korean spas when I was in my late 20s. And so you're in this room with, like, all these naked women of all sizes, all shapes, all ages. And for me, it was this huge moment of just seeing, like, okay, like, whether you're looking at the 16-year-old perfect tone fit normal body, like, you know, media body, or this, like, giant voluptuous 40-year-old woman with, like, all these curves, it was all beautiful. Yeah. And I was like, holy shit, like, well, if these are all beautiful, then mine's beautiful too. Yeah, and it doesn't have to be just this narrow one. I started with another point and I forgot where I went.
No, well, I love that too, because it's like,
the clothing.
That's real.
Yeah, it's real.
Yeah, and the clothing, you know, can kind of be a facade. And again, it can be a play. Yeah. Or it can be something that's hiding from a deficiency.
But I feel like the clothing, too, like you buy clothing in a certain size. Yeah. And then if your body changes, then you have to buy new clothing. You know, in a way, it's kind of like, it's supposed to stay the same, which I don't think is true. Yeah. Like, I think your body is supposed to fluctuate given different, like, whether you're living different places or eating different things or in a different mental state. But again, like, our society is so, like, it's supposed to be like this, not change.
Right, we don't want change. Yeah. Because that scares us, because it shows us the uncertainty of the mystery. But I can see that as like a breath goes in and out, you know, an expansion and a contraction, how the body's going to follow that kind of flow too. And so giving it permission to do that, I can see a lot of peace opening up to that. Yeah.
Well, and I feel like, too, we're so much harder on ourselves than anybody else.
Sure.
You know, like, if your friend gains weight, you're like, I didn't notice, or you still look beautiful. But if we gain weight...
you just don't care.
Yeah, you don't care. Because, it's not affecting, you know, you, and you don't care.
Oh, it's so hilarious. What about the experiences that you have with what you put in your body as it relates to an effort to maintain a shape? I've
had this recently. So after I gave birth, so Shasta's like 10 or 11 months now, it was interesting to see my own shift of, like, after I gave birth, like, I really didn't care what I looked like at all. Yeah. Like, I just didn't give a shit anymore. And so, which was really liberating for the first time in my life as a woman, not to give a shit at all. Yeah. So that was interesting. But I find with breastfeeding, the weight, I lost it pretty quickly and it's kind of stayed off. But I felt like I wasn't eating so well and I wanted to change my diet. So I went on this cleanse like 2 months ago, and it was, you know, just vegetables and protein and like super clean eating, which I feel great when I do that. And I did get like pretty like thin. Everyone's like, oh, you lost weight. You're looking good. Da, da, da. And I was like, I don't even care. I'm doing this like to clean up my eating and, you know, for Shasta's health with the breastfeeding. But, and And so I did the cleanse, and I felt great, but then, it's like no sugar. It's like hardcore. And so after a few weeks, I was like, okay, I want sugar again, or I want coffee again, or I want this again. And so I slid off of it, and then I noticed some of the weight came back, and part of me was like, oh, I failed. I did this cleanse, and I did this, and even though I didn't care at the time, going back, I was like, oh, I fucked up. But then I was like, it's okay. Like, I can do the cleanses sometimes. I can eat shit sometimes. And today I went and got a coffee and donut. And because I've been craving donuts for a while. And the smell of donuts, I realized, and coffee makes me think of my father. And so I've realized it's kind of this, like, joyful, like, almost a ritual thing that I think I want to do every Sunday is go get a donut. And part of me is like, oh, no, like, donuts are horrible. Like, you shouldn't be eating donuts at all, ever. And every Sunday, like, you really shouldn't be doing that. And so I was kind of fighting with it, and I was like, you know what, I'm doing this from a place of joy, and I kind of like the idea of having a ritual, maybe for a while, I don't know. And so this morning I went and got my donut and coffee, and but I definitely had that inner conflict going on of like, should I, like, donuts are bad.
Yeah, and that reminds me of, again, the insanity of the world that thinks it knows what's right for everyone. And it's funny to look at the history of this. I mean, even into like the 1900s of what we thought was healthy or not healthy. And even now, it's like we think we know what's healthy and we think we know what's not healthy.
Yeah.
And that will change. Yeah. We'll get more information 10 years down the road and be like, oh, shit, eggs are good for you.
Right?
Eggs are bad for you. And so there's always this bouncing around. It's kind of like the calorie thing. I remember when I was, I don't know, 10 years ago, 15, 20 years, who fucking knows. But there was kind of the conversation of, okay, it's all about calories. It's like you take in this many calories, it doesn't matter what you eat, and then you burn such and such calories. And so essentially they're saying that it doesn't matter if I eat a big-ass salad or if I eat shit.
Yeah.
If the calorie thing is the same, then everything's fine. Yeah. Which now we know is complete bullshit. But yet that was fact and that was truth back in the day.
Yeah.
And so when I see stuff like that, especially in like the medical industry and all that, I shut down to all that information.
Yeah.
It's like, I really don't fucking know.
Yeah.
And as much as these people think they know, I don't believe them.
Yeah.
That can be for their own world.
Yeah.
But there's been this pattern of thinking we know, finding out we don't know.
Yeah. Changing it.
Yeah,
and
expands.
Like now it's all about the gut. Like, oh, we've got all this bacteria in our gut. And I get to take care of that or it messes everything up.
That's the hot thing right now.
Now that's the hot thing, but then it'll be something else.
Yeah.
This isn't the final stop.
Yeah. And so for me, when I see that, now it has to come back to the sincerity of my own being within my own experience. What am I feeling? And what's true. And one thing that I've experienced, which I find valid, and again, from my own experience, but the mental state or the projection of story while we're eating food. Because I know it's like I'll eat certain food and for some reason I'm like telling myself a shitty story when I'm eating that particular food. And so I'm wondering, wait, is it the food? Or is it me feeling guilty? Or me feeling out of joy as I'm consuming this? And so that's something that I continue to kind of pay more and more attention to, is to realize, oh shit, I don't have any self-control right now. This is happening. And so am I going to guilt trip myself about it?
Self-control, like, according to...
Yeah, true.
According to who?
According to self, the imagined self.
Imagined self, or according to what other people tell you a self-controlled person should act like.
Oh my god, I love that. I love that. Just like broke something open for me, because it's like self-control. I can see that being a total fucking illusion right now.
Yeah.
Because what self?
Yeah.
The self that thinks it should be in control, which is looking for love because it feels it's deficient.
Yeah. And
if that's not true, then what control is there other than what is already happening?
Yeah. And eating whatever the fuck you want in the moment.
Jesus, that's not responsible.
It's not responsible.
See, and that's so funny because the concept of self-control is, like, from my human perspective, even from, like, a separate human game, it's like, that's where I'm kind of a failure, is like saying, okay, I'm going to do this, and then do it.
Yeah.
I seem to be operating much more of a flow that goes up and down, like a wave. It's just coming and going.
Which people don't like that all the time.
No, they don't. Yeah. And I even see myself struggling with it only because it jeopardizes the story.
Yeah.
of who I think I should be or where I should end up to protect whatever security I think or the mind thinks it needs.
Yeah.
And so it's so beautiful to constantly be reflecting and investigating that, to realize that the flow is the flow, man. It's not trying to protect my story.
Yeah.
It's not trying to make sure other people like me.
Yeah.
It's just doing what it needs to do in order for life to be life.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
For bringing that up.
Yeah.
And
Well, I mean, that's
destroying that.
It's definitely something that I've, worked with too. And like that whole game of trying to figure out like, okay, like, well, what am I supposed to be doing? Or what am I supposed to be eating? Or what weight am I supposed to be at? Or what's healthy? What's not healthy? And it makes you crazy. And I've kind of, I've practiced just totally accepting everything, whether I'm eating total junk shit or whether I'm eating no sugar, no caffeine, no alcohol, no dairy.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, like just be accepting of whatever it is and notice what's going on. Like, again, like when I'm eating totally clean and like, yeah, I feel great, but is that because of the story I'm telling?
Right.
I'm like, oh, I'm being a good person and I'm self-controlled and I'm being disciplined and I feel good about myself because I'm achieving. Or is it that the food is contributing to my healthy gut bacteria and the neurons that are in my stomach? Like, I don't know. Like, we don't know which one it is.
We want to know.
We want to know.
So that we can control it.
And that's like Abraham Hicks. They say that you can eat cookies for the rest of your life if you're in complete energetic alignment.
Yeah.
And your body will get the nutrients that it needs and you won't gain weight. But none of us believe that.
So it won't happen.
So it won't happen.
Yeah.
But then also, I think, too, once you do get into alignment, you don't necessarily crave the cookies and the donuts anymore.
True.
And so then you might, just be eating what your body actually does need in the moment.
Yeah, and that's kind of how I feel afloat. Because, again, it's like there's this effort in the mind to kind of pin it down and to say, okay, I just need to know this for certain so I can put my trust in it.
Yeah.
But that never really happens because it's always changing.
Yeah.
But there's this balance to it or this flow that when I'm essentially feeling in alignment, I tend not to eat certain things. Mm-hmm. And when I'm feeling out of alignment, I tend to reach for other things.
Yeah.
And again, one's not better or worse. It's like there's just a natural flow that includes both sides. It includes the exterior and the interior. Mm-hmm. And somehow they dance and play together. Mm-hmm. And so the only thing that I can really do is just be conscious of the present moment of where's this coming from. Mm-hmm. And if I don't feel like I have any control, then I don't have any fucking control. Mm-hmm. And it just happens. And that doesn't make me any particular thing. Yeah. But as a society, we really want to label that as a problem.
Yeah, you're weak.
Yeah, you're weak.
Or, well, that's a big one. You're weak.
Yeah, you don't have willpower.
You don't have willpower.
You're addicted.
You're not in control. You're addicted. Yeah. You're stuffing your emotions.
Which doesn't make anyone feel good.
No, it doesn't make anybody feel good. And it's not actually helping. No. I mean, I guess in certain cases you could use it to motivate yourself. Yeah. But usually that does not work. No. And that's why people go the yo-yo and the dieting and all of this striving and reaching, for the external. And it's not fun. For me, it's not fun.
No, it's not fun for me either. And
I used to be a Nazi about that stuff too. Like when I was living in LA, I was like hardcore.
That's a good space for that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, seriously. Like, so I'm living in LA and it's just like hardcore. And I remember, if somebody drank a soda, I would freak out. I'd be like, oh, you're drinking soda? That's awful. You shouldn't do that. It's so bad. And it's just like, come on. It's a soda, Like I've really backpedaled from that whole stance because that doesn't help anybody either if you're attacking somebody for drinking soda.
And that's so funny because there can be such certainty about that. Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
It is just like religion or just like any belief. You can totally buy into, this is the right one.
Yeah.
This is what's true.
Yeah.
But who fucking knows?
Well, that's what I see with science, that people treat it as a religion.
Yeah.
Of like, well, this is science, so it's true. And it's like, well, okay, maybe, but also science changes. Like you're saying the egg thing. Like the egg is such a good example because it's bad, and it's good, and it's bad, and it's good. And just any of that external, framework, whether it's religion or science or somebody else's opinion or anything, it's not going to be true all the time for you because your truth is constantly in flux and depending on a million different things.
Yeah, it's not that science is true or false. It's just, it is what it is. Yeah. And you can play with it however you want to play with it. It's just, from my experience, it's like, I'm not really trusting that. Because there's been too many experiences in my own life where things that were impossible became possible. Mm-hmm. And things that, happened, it's like a miracle. Mm-hmm. science can say it's impossible, but it's just something that science doesn't understand.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't mean it's any less valid.
Yeah.
It's just an expression.
Yeah.
So it's so beautiful to have that extension of freedom. It can be whatever it needs to be.
Yeah.
And if people want to believe it, then they can believe it, and that's totally fine. It just doesn't really fucking matter.
Yeah. And again, I think it's all comes down to that fear of
Yeah.
like wanting to be in control.
Yeah.
And the fear of like letting go. And like either following your intuition or like eating whatever you want in a way. You know, like sometimes I'll get craving like the donut or even like yogurt hut. Like I was really wanting to go get frozen yogurt at a yogurt hut with like toppings.
Right.
And I was wanting this for weeks. And I was like, no. And finally I was like, okay, I'm just going to go get it. And I went and I got some and they didn't have Captain Crunch, which I wanted. And then I got some other stuff. It wasn't that great. And now I have zero desire anymore for that.
Yeah.
You know, and so sometimes I feel like a craving, you just have to go through it.
Yeah.
And then it releases that energy. You know,
you
whereas
can
if
learn
you
from
fight
it,
against it, then you're just in that constant place of like, no.
Yeah, and that's like an agitation.
Yeah.
You know, it's going on in your system. It's like you're trying to fight something that's natural.
Yeah.
To, again, support an idea of self.
And I think, too, with intuitive eating, sometimes I feel like my body will need something and I have no idea why. Or, like, it might be something that my mind doesn't understand. You know, like, I found one time I was craving hazelnuts, you know, like, really hardcore, and I was like, PMSing or something. So I went and I ate a bunch of hazelnuts, and then I was like, I wonder what that was about. So I researched it, and hazelnuts are high in magnesium, which is good for PMS. Mm-hmm. And so it's like my body wanted something that I didn't understand, and I understood it afterwards with the mind. But I feel like that, too, like, a lot of times people will want something they think is bad.
Right.
And so they won't, like, even, like, steak. Like, if you're a vegetarian, you're craving steak. It's like, well, your body might need that.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, I like that.
And, yeah.
Yeah, because even, like, with that movement of eating meat or not eating meat or being a vegan or raw food or shit, I don't know. I've had my experiences, it seems like, with all of those.
Yeah.
And they've all seemed to be appropriate in their own time. Mm-hmm. And I remember early on when I was investigating that, of course, there was the play of, oh, this is the way. Yeah. Or this is the only
If everyone were vegan,
yeah,
then everything would be amazing.
Oh, then I could be at peace.
Yeah.
Then the world would be such a better place. But going through those and realizing that they're just opportunities to play and experience, you know, different modes of operating. And for me, there's a small desire to kind of maybe move back into that for a little while. Maybe cut out meat just because it's starting to feel heavy.
Yeah.
Or that I'm like consuming quite a bit of it and I just kind of feel it.
Yeah.
It's kind of like breads.
Yeah.
When I am in this space of eating lots of bread, I just feel it.
Yeah.
Like
I feel
it
puffier.
it feels puffy and weighted down and whatnot. Same with beer too.
Yeah.
Because of whatever's in there.
I've been reacting lately to beer more.
Yeah.
Like I feel like I'm getting allergic or something. My body doesn't want it because I'll have some, and then like my nose will start running or like different weird things. And I think maybe it's just the time. It's like maybe we've had enough meat for a certain point. Your body just doesn't need it for a while. Right. And then taking a break.
Yeah. And it's amazing too because your body really does let you know. Yeah. More so than any infomercial or something's going to let you know. Yeah. If you really just kind of pay attention. It's kind of like I knew a person that I was close with that had gallbladder attacks just constantly, and it was really popular in their family. Yeah. Everyone's getting it removed and all of that, and she would have really bad gallbladder attacks and be on the floor just like crouched down in pain. And then there was a diet change where she went vegan for 30 days and didn't have any attack, which was pretty amazing for her experience. And then from that point, just stayed a vegetarian and never had an attack again. Wow. And then 3 or 4 years later, reintroduced meat. And she's been fine. Yeah. And so, if anything, it was like, just taking a time out, to let the body kind of readjust and heal itself. Yeah. Made it so she didn't have to get it removed. But it was funny because everybody and their mom was saying, oh, well, you just need to get it taken out because that's what everyone does. Yeah. But that really wasn't an option for her.
Well, and also, if you give a different example, then it calls into question, everybody else. Like, the people don't like that sometimes. Yeah. Like, when you're like, oh, I cured this by doing this. And then they're like, what? And then it's like this whole, again, like an ego thing. Yeah. Of like, well, then you're saying that I did it wrong, or I didn't have to go through this.
That's pretty common, too. Yeah. People want to hold on to their way.
Yeah. But I think going back to, like, the body and self-love. Yeah. Because self-love. I feel like self-love is like at the root of everything.
Yeah.
You know, like loving ourselves more. And your body, you know, is you in this experience. And so it's like, I feel like that's a really important part of the self-love piece, and not just accepting all of your flaws or whatever, but like really learning to love your body like you love another person's body. Because there's that too, that whole dynamic of like, we are allowed to love other people, but we're not allowed to love ourselves like that. You know, then it's, you know, you're being conceited or a narcissist or something.
You're not a very good consumer if you love yourself.
That's huge. That's totally true. If you love your body, then you're not a good consumer.
Yeah. No, that's so, like, right on point, too. That's what it always comes down to. And for myself, the experience was, like, when I was 280 pounds, I remember pretty distinctly looking in the mirror, just full body, and wanting to be terribly upset, but just kind of allowing myself to love and to see what existed within that love, and kind of what I recognized, and difficult to put into words, but in just touching my body and feeling my body, it was like, I'm not this body. It was like this really unique seeing that it was a suit, that it wasn't in any way defining what I am as an expression. It was just a natural response to the conditioning thus far. It's like, this is what's, you know, happened. But yet it had nothing to do with my lovability as an expression of the divine, or just a soul creature, or whatever word you want to use. It was just really, really interesting to, like, love that which was beyond the body.
And identify with that.
And identify with that rather than identifying with a shape or with a conditioned judgment. And then also to sit there and look at myself, and then to watch.
I was just wiggling my fingers. Like, what if you're looking at your hands like you're in a skin suit? Sorry.
You're all putting your hands out in front of you. Like, I'm like, is this some sort of signal or a cue?
Time to play the piano.
Yeah,
I was just wiggling my hands. Like, if you look at your body, like, as a skin suit, like a puppet, essentially, for what you truly are, that's kind of crazy.
Yeah, it is.
Which I feel like that's what you were saying. Like, you were like, I'm not this body. Like, I have this body, but it's that the whole thing of, like, you're not a body, you're a spirit.
And there was just so much more sincerity in identifying with the essence of what I am. Rather than the body, because when we get tied up into body identification, it's like there's so much mental energy that goes into protecting that. Especially within
controlling it
within a judgmental society that holds that as some sort of value. That your body reflects your value as a human being.
That's a big one.
And I just don't know if I want to play that game. Because then if I play that game, then I'm always judging other people, saying, oh, well, they're not valid because of whatever. Or they're not as cool because of whatever.
Or they're overweight, so there's something wrong with them. Because they're not strong enough to not eat all the donuts.
Oh, God, I love that. And that's so much how the ego wants to hold itself up to. By calling out other people, saying they should be able to do this and should be able to do that.
Well, it's that comparison game of like, oh, well, if they're down here, then I'm up here. So, like, in that relative space, then I'm better, and then that gives you that sense of, like, you know. But then, of course, there's the opposite of, like, the other people that are up here, and you're down here, you're going to compare yourself, so you can't win at that game.
At all.
But you can win at being your authentic self in your own beautiful, unique body.
I like that.
But it is weird. It's like the energy that is us is operating this body.
Just like a puppet.
Yeah.
It's
trippy.
This is where we need a video camera for people to see the strange shit we're doing right now.
Well, so, like, like, for the listeners, like, if you look at your hand and, like, wiggle your fingers and, like, just think that life is moving through that, and, like, your soul or whatever, however you experience it, is moving your fingers.
And I also like, as far as the identification with self, beyond the body, from my perspective, it's like the real body of what I am is the entirety of the present moment. And so even as we look out this window and we see the tree, because that tree is in my experience right now, I'm the one that's perceiving it, so I'm creating it. So that too is what I am. And so in this, it's like, and this kind of goes back to a lot of what Muji says in regard to, you know, existing as if you're not a person and just being there. And just showing up and allowing life to be life, essentially,
Yeah.
as if it is already what you are. It's already, on your side or in favor of your experience. And so you kind of surrender the separate person and just show up as this empty space.
And then, in a way, by identifying with everything that's present, you let go of that, like, that fear of, like, you having to do it all on your own.
Yeah.
Or, like, that it's just me and I need to look a certain way or I need to be doing things. It's like, no, like, I'm one with everything here, so it's expansive.
Yeah. Yeah, and then in that nothing becomes an enemy.
Yeah.
It's all what you are. And I even find that with conflict with other people that might arise. It's like recognizing that, oh, this is for me. And I've experienced this over the past week. I wouldn't call it like relationship drama. I just call it relationship opportunity for people to be honest and to express themselves and all of that. And I've noticed that, wow, in a way, I could see how this could turn into drama if I wanted to be a separate person about it and feel like a victim of whatever.
And defend.
Yeah, but really, it's like I'm a container that's holding space that allows this to unfold for the sake of healing, for the sake of authenticity.
Which is beautiful.
Which is really beautiful. Yeah. And so in that, the drama doesn't become drama. It becomes an opportunity for expansion.
Yeah.
And so in that, too, I think it's a great pointer that we're not trying to avoid this or that kind of human experience, but rather being a container that allows it to unfold authentically so that there's more of a discovery of what's true.
In a really profound way.
Yeah.
Like, by doing it that way, you're making the experience so much more profound because you are totally present for it and allowing it instead of trying to fight it or change it or, control it.
Yeah, and actually I had this conversation with somebody, I think it was 2 nights ago, where we were kind of dialoguing about a situation that might be perceived as scary, and for me it was like, this is just simply an opportunity for us to draw ourselves closer to sincerity. It's like beyond the surface condition, because you can look at what's happening on the surface and all these labels and whatever stories of what the mind thinks is going on, but underneath all of that is this movement of spirit that is just drawing us closer to sincerity, drawing us closer to the truth. So in that, the only purpose of this is for me to be as honest as I can. Because I can recognize where the ego wants to come in and hide and not be sincere and honest and manipulate. So I can get my way, which is so I can hide from what I'm afraid of. And so in recognizing that, it's like, okay, this is just about being as honest as I can so that the light can do whatever it needs to do and surrender and sacrifice my own agenda.
And be naked.
Exactly. And so that, for me, is just a beautiful example of what everything is about. Every challenge, every drama that arises is this opportunity to come back into sincerity. And again, as it relates to the body, is just being as sincere as we can without trying to kind of hide from anything.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah, which even as I say that, it's like, oh, I see how I hide here.
Oh, yeah.
As it relates to body stuff, because,
Well, and it's interesting, that thing of getting to the point where you love your body enough that you would be comfortable being naked anytime, anywhere, in front of anybody.
Yeah.
And then instead of hiding behind clothes, like wearing clothes as like an adornment or because, you enjoy it or whatever. But I feel like we don't often get to that point of, being totally comfortable and loving of our own naked body.
Yeah. Oh, God, that's such a great point. It reminds me, and still there's a thread of this in my own experience, where growing up, my biggest fear, like literally my biggest fear, was being in a public place and somehow my shirt comes off.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's like I couldn't fathom the idea of being exposed in that way. And I even did this experiment as I was kind of like going through my own transformation from 280 pounds, where I was out hiking, and it was one of my favorite places, Table Rock. And I was up there, and I thought that I was kind of on my own. And so I was like, okay. And I just, allowed myself to take my shirt off and just kind of roam around and go up to my spot. And then as I was up there, I noticed some hikers coming. And it was this beautiful experience of intense fear, like paralyzing fear. And it's so funny how nonsensical it is, but that's the nature of all fear. But how I was so terrified of being exposed with these other people coming by that I'd probably never see again and don't know. But it was, again, that being exposed sensation. So I recognized in myself that, okay, this is happening. Now I'm going to watch how everything's going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I could recognize the fear and how
Yeah.
insane it was. Because, again, it was just like a conditioned response that didn't want to be rejected. And so I just gave myself permission to totally go through that, totally be assaulted, seemingly, and watch how everything was going to be okay. And I think that was like the start of a major healing for me, which was being more comfortable in that space. And I even noticed that even more as I'm in Hawaii and stuff, just really giving myself permission to not give a fuck, you know, and to walk around half naked if that's what I feel like I want to do. And in that was so much healing. I could feel
You went through the fear.
Yeah, I went through the fear and exposed myself to the sun, exposed myself to the light, and I felt like that was really healing. That allowed myself to continue to drop weight or whatever.
Yeah.
But, and again, anything in me that's holding on to weight, from my experience, I see it as a form of hiding. Yeah. It's like its own mechanism that's showing me something, and it could be different for somebody else. Yeah. But I can see how it's reflecting somewhere that I'm hiding. So it's a great tool, a great indicator that helps me to grow.
And again, I think it goes back to not being aware of those triggers and moving through them, but then not letting them control you anymore, and then choosing. Yeah. Once you've gone through that fear of being, shirtless or naked, then you can choose whether or not you're going to be shirtless or naked, but you no longer have that fear that, limits your options.
Yeah.
And I feel like I went through that, with makeup, as a woman, when before, I wouldn't leave the house or let anybody see without mascara on. That was my one fixation. And then finally, I released that by, living out in the middle of nowhere down in Patagonia where nobody cares if you're wearing makeup. Yeah. And even down there is where nobody cares if you shaved your legs or your armpits. Nobody really does it down there. Nobody cares. And so it's been interesting for me, coming back to this society and, what do I choose to do with my body to fit in? Yeah. Because, with my armpits or with my legs, as a woman, you're expected, especially, a young woman, you're expected to do certain things. And it's an interesting, kind of struggle or play to, see when the fear comes up of, I'm going to be judged because of my armpit hair or something like that, and does it bother me enough to change it? Or would I like to change it to look a certain way? It's very complicated. Yeah, to play.
And it's funny too because I find myself when I kind of investigate what I'm attracted to, and even with people that I'm involved with now, it's there's hairy leg situation or hairy armpit situation. Yeah. And it's just kind of amazing to me how okay I am with that. And I think a lot of it spawned from my time in Hawaii. Yeah. Living in the jungle with other people. Yeah. But there's kind of this naturalness to it that I really appreciate. Almost like a non-caring, which I really like.
Well, in a way, because it's crazy in a way. I have hair on my legs. All humans, women or men, have hair. Yeah. And I kind of processed it as that our society has this huge divide between men and women. Yeah. Our society wants women on one side and men on the other side, and they don't like it when you're kind of in the middle. Yeah. And so, the extreme version of woman is hairless, basically. And now even men are getting hairless, too. Yeah. But it's why is that? Why are women expected to have hairless legs when they don't? And, why do I have to thus shave my legs every day to fit this standard that's been created that's completely unreal? Yeah. And why is that beautiful and hairy legs are not beautiful? You have hairy legs. Yeah. I don't care. I don't even think about it. But if I had hairy legs, people are like, oh, your hair, why don't you shave your legs? You know, it's so crazy.
Well, it's the conditioning, of society. It's we grew up as being the norm. Yeah. It's kind of engagement rings. Yeah. For me, even when I was married, I didn't wear a ring. It didn't click for me that was necessary.
Which it was entirely invented by a jewelry company to sell rings.
Exactly, and it became the status quo. Yeah. And so in that, with shaving your legs, it's that's just the status quo, which is a great opportunity for us to reflect within ourselves. Yeah. Do we joyfully want to engage in that? Yeah. Or are we doing it from fear? Yeah. And I think that's what everything comes down to. Oh, yeah, it's there's so many options. Everything's conditioning. Nothing's right. Nothing's wrong. Yeah. And so it comes down to what mode are you operating in? Yeah. Is it because of fear or is it for love? Yeah. And that should be like the most important question.
Yeah. And then with eating too.
Yeah, same thing.
Like, are you eating out of fear? Or are you eating out of love and joy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And everyone gets to investigate that for themselves.
Yeah.
And if you're moving in love, then what the fuck does it matter?
It doesn't.
It doesn't. And again, there's the fear that I won't be accepted or I won't be able to find myself a partner or whatever.
Yeah.
But again, for myself, it's like that's been proven as bullshit.
Oh yeah.
Because it's just
it doesn't matter.
It just doesn't matter.
No, it doesn't
when
matter.
you connect with somebody, you connect with them.
Yeah.
And especially if there's love there, it's like all of these other things just don't
matter at all. But again,
matter.
in our consumer culture, it's all about comparison and competition, and that's what runs our entire society.
Yeah.
And so if everybody was like totally okay and loved themselves, we'd go bankrupt tomorrow. Our whole economy would collapse.
Exactly. That's so true too.
Which is kind of exciting.
It is.
What if everybody like woke up in the morning and they were just in love with themselves and their bodies and their lives and everyone around them? They wouldn't go to work. They'd just be like, "Oh, let's hang out. Let's sit here and talk." Like they wouldn't go and buy shit.
But in that, it's like the current structure wouldn't work.
No, it would completely collapse.
Yeah, which would be fun to see how all that plays out.
I think it would be.
Yeah, because in little ways things are collapsing.
Yeah.
But again, there's some major things that might or might not happen. But
I guess the more important question is, what if I woke up tomorrow morning totally in love with myself and my body? Because I do that all the time to other people. When they're like, well, if the world, I'm like, well, what about if you? And they're like, whatever. So I do that to myself. So if I woke up tomorrow, I mean, I actually would kind of be like I am now. Like I'm pretty close. I'm not going to say I'm totally 100% in love with myself entirely and like believing of my own beauty, but I'm much closer than I've ever been.
For sure.
Yeah.
And I think that's how it'll always be. It's like this ever expansion thing.
Settle again.
Because I have for myself the experience of feeling, oh wow, I'm there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel that love, but then you see more areas where it can expand.
Yeah.
And I think that's the nature of expansion, where it just continues to expand.
Yeah. Or life exposes more areas where you're hiding, or you can realize it, and you're like, oh shit. Yeah.
And so in that, our incompletion is our completion.
Yeah.
Of the beautiful unfolding, the beautiful blooming of it all.
Exactly.
But again, holy shit, man, time just flies by. It's been almost an hour.
What?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome.
Did we cover everything that we wanted to in that?
Yes, pretty much. I think, but going back to where we left off on the Hawaii conversation with like being naked in Hawaii, in the ocean, and like that like whole like not giving a fuck what anybody else thinks of your naked body and just enjoying the moment, like that's the best for me. Like not that it has to be naked in Hawaii, but like just that feeling of like freedom, total freedom from my thoughts and judgments and from my thoughts and judgments about what anybody else's thoughts and judgments are.
And that's a great practice.
Yeah.
I mean, really, because you step right through the fear.
Yeah.
You start to see the insanity of the fear of being afraid of being rejected and all that. You're like, that just doesn't make any fucking sense. It's so not real. And so if that's the case, well, let's move in that direction then. Let's test the theory and see that the fear of fire can't actually burn you. But you have
That's a good one.
Yeah.
The fear of fire can't actually burn you.
You have to be willing to walk through the fire to see that it can't burn you.
Yeah.
And once you know that it can't burn you, then you walk with freedom.
Yeah.
And so that's what the invitation is. And for the listeners, if they're looking for some practicality of how to move forward, find out what you're afraid of and then move in that direction.
So if you're afraid of being naked, go streaking.
Yeah, go streaking. Go skinny dip somewhere.
Or go to Hawaii and go on a new beach naked.
Yeah, come out to Hawaii in December 13th through the 18th and get naked.
Yeah.
But no obligation.
No obligation. You can wear your clothes if you want to.
And I won't
but you're
look.
invited. I'll be naked. I'll go naked. I'll be the first one out on the beach and I'll strip down with my baby. Babies love being naked.
Oh, that's so true.
Yeah. They don't care.
They don't give a shit.
No, they don't.
All right. Well, thank you for hanging out with us on this 6th episode.
Yay.
And, of course, you can learn more on Facebook, on tigmonk.com/ podcast something.
Yes.
But if you go to tigmonk.com, look for our podcast link, and you can see all of our episodes. Other than that, let's keep doing this.
Yay!
Thanks for hanging out, and cheers to the beauty that you already are.
Bye!
You've been listening to Spiritual Bullshit with Tigmonk and Maya Lila. Learn more at tigmonk.com.